Hello and welcome to the daily newspaper analysis. Today we shall be discussing the newspaper of the 11th of January 2018. So coming to the first article, this is an article on the editorial page of the Hindu and is the most important article on the editorial today. It is read as the prescription for the future. The opinion is that the National Medical Commission bill has to be fine-tuned, especially in planning for rural health care. Now the context is as obvious. It is the National Medical Commission bill which has been recently sent to the Parliamentary Standing Committee by the Lok Sabha. Now, some issues relating to the bill and certain reforms which have been advocated for the bill is what has been analyzed in this editorial. Now, before that, let's delve into some background on the issue. Before the proposed National Medical Commission, it is the MCI which was looking into the medical education as well as medical practice within the country. This body is a statutory body which came up in the year 1934 after the 1933 Indian Medical Council Act. However, this act was replaced in the year 1956 in the aftermath of India's independence, and it came to be known as the 1956 Indian Medical Council Act. Now, this body has been time and again criticized for corruption charges, inefficiencies, more prominently in the year 2010 when the president of MCI, Mr. Ketan Desai, was accused of corruption charges. In the aftermath of this scandal, the body was suspended and only to be reformed in the year 2013. Later, with the formation of Niti Aayog, there was a call for entirely overhauling the medical system within the country and replacing this body by a new body that is going to be the National Medical Commission. Now, some issues related to the National Medical Commission are, first and foremost, there is an issue of obsolete curriculum. Now, under the MCI, which was looking into the curriculum of the undergraduate MBBS course for doctors, the curriculum was largely obsolete and it has not kept pace with the requirement of the country. Now, what has happened is that because of this obsolete curriculum, the doctors who are being produced, the graduate MBBS doctors, are not very specialized in even carrying out some basic procedures like a cesarean childbirth. So what is happening is that this inefficiency in the doctors is causing them to go in for post-graduation studies. And this is leading in a void. It is creating a vacuum of deficiency of doctors, and this is what is having heavy costs on the country. So this is one analysis that has been drawn. Another thing is that of issue of concentration of power in the MCI. Now, at the time of the MCI, all the power related to medical practice as well as education was concentrated with the president of the MCI. This is something that has been rightly done away with in the proposed bill, where there will be, four autonomous boards amongst whom the powers have been distributed. These boards will be, the first board will be for undergraduate education, the second board will be for postgraduate education, the third board will be for medical assessment and rating, and the fourth board will be for ethics and registration. So this is a good practice. This is a good advocacy by the new bill that has been analyzed. Also, previously MCI was a closed body. It had only doctors. However, the present body, that is the proposed present National Medical Commission, proposes to have other participants as well, which will include patient rights advocates, ethicists, and this practice of having multiple representatives on the National Medical Commission is a practice which is followed globally in countries like UK, Australia, and Canada. So this is a good precedence which the newer bill has. However, some shortcomings of this bill are on the issue of selection of members. Now, first you need to understand that how are the members selected in the MCI. In the MCI, these members were selected through elections, but there was no restriction on the number of terms that a member could have in the MCI. This resulted in it becoming a closed body, and these members were continuously being repeated within the MCI. It almost became akin to a revolving door. For example, the accused president in the 2010 case, Mr. Ketan Desai, was already facing corruption charges in the year 2001. So he was re-elected in 2008 again for another tenure. So this was a major problem in the MCI. However, the newer bill, the National Medical Commission, has proposed that the members will now be they will be selected directly by the government. So this is again something that has been criticized because this leads to bureaucracy in the procedure. Also, it leads to politicization of this body. The entire purpose that this body should be an independent body is something that is going to be defeated, and the matter is even more serious because private medical educational institutes have often close links with politicians, as they often fund these politicians for elections. So that could build a unhealthy nexus between politicians and these private medical institutes. So that is something that is being brought about. Some suggestions have been given to do away with this problem. The first suggestion is that the previous practice of electing members should be adopted, but with a limited time of office, limited term for office is something that has been suggested. Also, another way that could be adopted is that an independent body can, like the UPSC, can be chosen for selecting the members to the National Medical Commission. So this is one issue for which more deliberation is required, and the bill being under the review of the Parliamentary Standing Committee, such changes are definitely warranted in this bill that has been advocated in this editorial. Another important issue that has been brought about is that of shortage of doctors and problems of rural healthcare in India. Now, for this you need to understand some data. The WHO prescribes a norm that for every 1,000 patients within the country, there should be one doctor. However, in India, the ratio is that for every 1,700 patients, there is one doctor. So definitely in the first prima facie itself, the figures are distorted in India. Another issue is that majority of these doctors are in the urban areas. So even if this appears, this average has been drawn that for 1,700 patients, there is one doctor. In the field, in the real scenario, this figure also does not exist in India because these doctors are largely concentrated in the urban population, as the rural population constitutes 70%. So it is a stark reflection that how much there is a scarcity of doctors in the rural areas in India. So this is a background in discussing the problem of shortage of doctors. Further, an analysis has been drawn that even if 100 medical colleges are added every year for the next 5 years, and a time span of 2029, a time span of 10 years, that is till 2029, the shortage of doctors will not be plugged. Also, urbanization cannot happen in these rural areas at a pace to incentivize doctors to go into rural areas. So definitely this problem of rural healthcare and shortage of doctors is something that is festering in India, and it cannot be plugged with the same pace for the coming next 10 years. In such a scenario, India cannot tell its rural citizens to wait for 10 years. That is something that is highly unethical of any government. So some innovative solutions are definitely is what is warranted out of this newer bill. And that is what has been advocated in this editorial. So some suggestions have been given is that first and foremost, an example of sub-Saharan countries should be taken and should be adopted by India, which is focusing on training non-doctors in basic medicine and even surgery. For example, nurses can be trained, informal healthcare providers like the midwives can be trained by the government in short courses for providing rural healthcare. A separate cadre of medical practitioners needs to be created in India. This has been advocated for long, and this is a direct solution that I would suggest you should use in your answers. Another issue is that the bill, the National Medical Commission bill, proposes for a bridge course for the Ayush professionals. However, this has been objected to by the Indian Medical Association, but definitely a debate in this regard is warranted, considering that India's case is different from other countries, other modern countries. So definitely newer and wider social innovations is what is warranted in India. This kind of a model was also adopted in Chhattisgarh, a case study of Chhattisgarh in the year 2001, where due to shortage of doctors, Chhattisgarh had implemented a training course for preparing a newer cadre of health professionals, but somehow this was not a success in Chhattisgarh because it was objected to by the doctors there. So these are the basic problems which the National Medical Commission bill should delve into and resolve. Further, an opinion has been given is that the National Medical Commission has huge hopes and needs to be critically examining and formulating to ensure that it is truly a game-changing reform for the festering problems of the health industry in India. So this is an opinion which you too can replicate in your answers. Now coming to the next article, the map for rural deprivation. The context is that of agricultural and rural distress, which has been examined vis-a-vis the construction jobs within India. So that is the entire context of this article. The first half of the article, the first part of the article is largely about a very fact-oriented one, which is about the identification of the rural poor through the socio-economic caste census 2011 data. So some important points I'm just going to enumerate, though I have always believed that UPSC is not, UPSC Answers is not a forum where you can present so many figures as have been given in this editorial. So definitely some facts are important, but not to the extent as it has been given in this particular editorial. So coming to the socioeconomic caste census 2011, it has mapped rural deprivation across 7 indicators. These indicators are households with a kacha house, households without an adult member in working age, households which are headed by a woman and without an adult member in the working age, for the households with a disabled member, or a household without an able-bodied adult, also SC and ST families, a household without literate adults over 25 years, and landless households engaged in manual labor. So these are the parameters across which rural deprivation has been analyzed. 30% of the people who were analyzed had 2 deprivations, 13% of the people had 3 deprivations, 0.01% had of the population had all the 7 deprivations, and approximately 48.5% of the population had at least 1 deprivation. So roughly you can estimate that approximately it is 49% of the rural poor who were identified by the census who were deprived. And also of those who were not landless, an analysis is that 84% of the farmers in India who are not landless are largely small and marginal farmers. So they are akin to being landless only, as the average farm size in the country has reduced from 2.25 hectares to 1.25 hectares from the year 1970 to 2010. So these are some facts that have been given in this editorial. So the basic issues are, first and foremost, of farm income. This has been a repetitive concern across several editorials now, that farmer incomes have been low and these incomes are causing an exodus from the agriculture sector. Now, 2 types of people are going to be a part of this exodus and seeking newer jobs. The first are those who are educated, and the second are those who are not educated. Now, it is no brainstormer that the numbers of those who are poor and not educated is obviously higher than the young and than the young youth who are educated. So the author has brought about an analysis that the issue is for the government is of creating non-agricultural jobs, and in these non-agricultural jobs which are for the uneducated poor people is something that is more important than those for the educated youth. So that is one analysis he has drawn. Further, he has said that till date, the construction sector is the sector which has provided maximum jobs to this particular section who is of the poor landless farmers. Further, he has said that the increase in cultural jobs, the construction sector jobs has been 13 times as compared to other sectors. So definitely there is much value that should be given to this construction sector, because this involves fewer skills and fewer educational requirements, and so this is the primary sector which is going to give jobs to the large section of population which is which is having an exodus in the agriculture sector. So that is an analysis. Further, the author has brought about an analysis of the chain impact. The chain impact is that all these people who will become jobless due to this agricultural distress will result in a lower rural demand, and this will also have an impact on the rural manufacturing and small scale industries in the rural regions. So definitely this is going to have a chain impact on the rural economy as a whole. So the suggestion that the author has given here is that first and foremost, there is a need to increase construction sector, which is the primary sector to absorb this exodus that is happening in the agriculture sector. And it is for this reason that greater impetus needs to be given to schemes like the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, and also increasing public investment in infrastructure and construction, which has been laggard in the country because of the lower investments by the government in the private sector, also the rising NPAs. All of this has had impacts on the culture, on the construction sector, and so there is a high need to give a push to this sector, as this is the primary sector which can curb the agricultural distress for time being. So this is the entire analysis of this particular editorial. This is important from few point of view, because this is largely a very restricted editorial. It does not have a very widespread analysis, so it is important in analyzing the solution for agricultural distress in construction sector. So that is the importance of this editorial. Coming to the next article, not by diktat alone, the opinion is that the Supreme Court does right to make playing of national anthem before a film optional. This is also the context that the Supreme Court has recently ordered of making it optional for cinema halls to play the national anthem. Now, coming to some background of this issue, first and foremost, you need to understand that in the November 2016, on 30th of November 2016, the Supreme Court had given an interim order where it made compulsory for cinema halls to play the national anthem. This is in tandem with the Prevention of Insults to National Honor Act 1971. This was an act which prohibited insults to national symbols like the flag, the national anthem, the national constitution. So this is the act as per which the court had derived its interim order. Also, something in the background related to this issue is the fundamental duties, which are a part of the Constitution under Part 4A, under Article 15A, and it was added to the Constitution by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act in the year 1976. So all these fora called for respect to the national anthem. This was also being delved into by a 12-member interministerial committee which was set up in December 2017 in the aftermath of these orders by the Supreme Court. So this is the entire background of this order. Now, what is the issues related to this newer order by the Supreme Court, where it has undone its interim order? First and foremost is the issue of coercion as an element in nationalism. Is it valid to coerce nationalism in a citizen, and especially in a citizen of free country? And can coercion actually lead to nationalism and patriotism? Is something that is to be debated upon. Experts definitely advocate that coercion is no means to ensure nationalism and patriotism, and it has failed over the years. It has failed as an experiment in other countries, and definitely it should not be warranted in a country like India, which is a democracy. So that is the first issue. The second issue was that of judicial overreach. In its November 2016 order, the court had given an order for allowing these for making it mandatory for cinema halls to play the national anthem. This amounted to a judicial overreach, because the duty of the judiciary is only to see whether or not a particular law is impacting the is within the reach of the Constitution or not. It shouldn't be impacting adversely the fundamental rights. It is not for the judiciary to lay down the norms as to what needs to be done where. So that is an issue. This aspect, that should national anthem be played in the halls or not, this is a legal aspect, and this should be dealt should have been dealt by the Parliament, and it was not something that was the ambit of the court itself. This has also been acknowledged by the Supreme Court recently, and it is in this light that the Supreme Court has reversed its previous order, and it has said that it is upon the Parliament to decide as to where and where not the national anthem has to be sung. That is the issue. Another issue is that of patriotism within the country. Now, should patriotism be a visible virtue, or should it be something that should be within the spirits of the citizens? That is one question that has been raised in this article. Another issue is that does one need to wear one's patriotism on one's sleeve? So these kind of ethical and moral questions have been raised in this regarding this controversy. Further, there is an issue of moral policing which is coming up, and it is getting a state sponsorship under such kind of orders, like that of the November 2016 order. Also, the court has recently highlighted this issue, and it has questioned that where will this moral policing stop, because if the court at one point of time can say, if the society for that matter can one point of time say that national anthem should be played in the cinema halls, later it can be said that a particular dress code should be there for visiting the cinema halls. So such kind of moral policing is not warranted in a sovereign country which is democratic. So this is an issue that gets highlighted in this controversy. Also, an issue of citizen vigilantism is something that has been raised. The 2016 order was followed by a number of cases where people were abused in these cinema halls for not standing up to the anthem. There was often violence in the cinema halls because of this reason. So it resulted in a sentiment of vigilantism by the citizen, which is unhealthy in a pluralistic country like India. So this is one issue. Another issue is that why only cinema halls were being targeted and not other, platforms where meetings were being held and performances were being held. So it was something that was unequal and only targeted a particular section, which was the cinema halls and movies. So this is one issue that was raised. Also, the issue was that of a mature democracy. Should all such kind of diktats and paternalistic opinions of the state be welcomed in a democracy as mature as India? And is nationalism in India at a stage where it does not require such coercion? These were issues that definitely erupted in the backdrop of this controversy. So this is another issue. Now an opinion has been given. This has been the opinion which has been advocated in its recent judgment by the Supreme Court also. So the opinion is that there is no doubt that the national symbols warrant respect within the country. Whenever the national anthem is being played, indeed it is duty of the citizens to stand up in respect of the national anthem. However, the directive that where to play the national anthem is not something that needs to be forced upon the citizens, and this should not become a coercive project. So that is the opinion that has been given on this issue, and that is what is important for UPSC. Coming to the next article, the visa heartache. The context is that of the H1B visa, which has been a continuous bone of contention between India and US. The issue of the H1B visa is continuously raised in US, and it is being used as a political tool in US. So that is the entire context of this article. Now coming to the background, what do you understand by this H1B visa? The H1B visa is a visa in the US under the Immigration and Nationality Act of the US, which allows US employers to employ foreign workers in specialty occupations. So this is a keyword, that is the specialty occupations. These occupations include IT sector, these include accounts, specialty in biotechnology. So that is the importance of the specialty occupation. Now, the issues related to this visa and some analysis that has been drawn is, first and foremost, the major bone of contention is that if a person who is in US through a H1B visa is removed from his job, because this is a visa which is given only if a US employer is employing a person with specialty occupation. So if a person is removed from his job, in such a scenario, the person should get a new job, or else as per law, he is going to be deported within a grace period of 60 days. So this is the law, but this does not actually happen in practice. In practice, in US, what is happening is that as long as the person's application for green card is pending, the person who has been holding a H1B visa is not going to be deported. So now in the recent controversy, what had happened was that President Trump had called for doing away with this practice and strictly adhering to the law of deportation of those people who had been whose jobs had been taken away, or who had lost their jobs. So this is the basic bone of contention between with regarding to the H1B visa. Now some analysis that has been drawn is that first and foremost, the issue of H1B visa is largely a protectionist rhetoric which is used due to political compulsion, and it does not have much ground to it. This is something that experts say is acknowledged both by the US as well as by India. So this is not a major deterrent, a major irritant in the India-US relations. That is one analysis. Another thing is that specialty occupation workers For example, the IT, finance, accounts, all of them, they are filling a void in the US labor force, which is much to the benefit of US. And this is something that is even acknowledged in the US. And so this whole fear regarding H1B visa is false, as the US cannot afford to do away with this visa, as it is largely in the US interest, because the US might, as both economically as well as technologically, is credited to these this diaspora, which constitutes the specialty occupation. Another thing is that the corporate lobby in the US is very powerful, and this corporate lobby will not allow doing away with the H1B visa, because it is this corporate lobby which are the employers, and they are getting this pool of skilled workforce through these through the H1B visa. So that is a basic analysis that has been drawn. So the article is a practical analysis of H1B visa. That is why I have discussed it in this discussion. Coming to the next article, a difficult year. Now this is an article dealing with the problems that Myanmar has faced in the past 1 year. The article is not very important because it has some details of episodes related to Myanmar itself, and such details are not warranted for UPSC from UPSC point of view, but definitely some basic analysis needs to be drawn, as Myanmar is a major and a significant neighbor of India. So that is the significance of this particular editorial. I shall be restricting the discussion to only major points which are important for India. So coming to those issues, first is that Myanmar has been witnessing a restrictions being placed on media freedom, and the civilian government in Myanmar is reluctant or is unable to act in this regard. So that is one problem in Myanmar. Another problem is that in the Rakhine state in Myanmar, where the UN, regarding the Rohingya issue, the UN has called the Rohingya crackdown in Rakhine as an ethnic cleansing. Also, the Amnesty International has called it a crime against humanity. So definitely, and also there's a issue of rising Rohingya refugees in the region. So that is one problem. Another issue is that the ethnic armed groups are not able to strike a peace deal with the Myanmar government. There are issues of federal army and secession which are continuing to fester between these ethnic armed groups on one hand and the Myanmar government on the other hand. So these are the basic three problems that the country Myanmar is facing at present. So this is a brief of that. Now coming to the ramifications for India. Definitely an unstable Myanmar is not in the Indian interest. You can see that the large border that Myanmar shares with India's northeast. Myanmar is the gateway of India to the East Asia, and especially in the backdrop of India's rising relationship with the ASEAN, Myanmar is of key importance to India's Act East policy. It is of utmost importance for the development of India's northeast. So definitely Myanmar is of much utility to India. The Rakhine state, where the entire Rohingya issue is festering, is where the Sitwe port is located, and this is important for the Kalandan multimodal project between India and Myanmar. So that is important for India. Also, regarding the insurgency issue, Myanmar is important because Myanmar is critical in reducing these insurgent elements in the northeast. A number of ethnic groups between Myanmar and India are common. For example, the Nagas in India, there is a Nagas ethnic group in India. Similarly, there is a Naga ethnic group in Myanmar. So Myanmar is critically important for security in northeast, and definitely a stable Myanmar is very much in India's interest. So these are the ramifications which India will face in case of any instability in Myanmar. So that is what you can extract out of this piece of editorial. Coming to the next article, Thinking Beyond Quotas. Now, despite being a small article, this is an important one. The context is that of rising quota demands in the country. Quota demands or the reservation demands within the country. For example, the Gujjars in Rajasthan, Jats in Haryana, Patels in Gujarat, all these communities have been asking for reservation in government jobs. So that is the context. Now some issues are being highlighted in this respect. First and foremost is that politically powerful communities are nurturing a sense of victimhood. This is important. This is unhealthy for the democracy. That is the importance of it. Another issue is that more than 50% of the jobs in India are reserved. So there is a feeling of marginalization amongst various communities who are not being able to reap the benefit of reservations. This is something that is not in the interest of integration of the country. Further, there is an issue of that the youth in the country is not being gainfully skilled and not being able to employ the youth in the country. So there is a competition that is arising in the youth, a frustration that is arising in the youth regarding the fewer number of jobs in the country. The issue is not that these jobs are reserved or not reserved. The issue is that there are no jobs in the country. So the few jobs that are existing, competition over them is so high that large number of communities are getting frustrated over this aspect, which they are venting out through greater demands for quotas. So that is an issue. Also, the issue is that there is a craze for government jobs in the country till today. And even if private jobs are being created, this is not satisfying the youth. This is a mindset problem in the country where the government jobs are considered superior, they're considered much better than the private sector. So this is a case of behavioral aspect is also involved in this issue. Another thing is that vocational training in the country has been inadequate and it has not kept pace with the modern industry requirements. And this has resulted in the large amount of our youth not being skilled as per the demands of the industry. So this is a major issue. Another thing is that of small educational base in the country. 70% of India's workforce is without tertiary education. Now this is a major problem because even if the youth in the country is going to get skilled, what happens is that when they enter the job market, they cannot grow in the job market because they are educationally not competent. So that is an issue, that is a field level problem that is being faced by the industry. So that is a major issue. Another issue is that there is a lack of well qualified trainers within the country. Further, all of these problems regarding skilling of youth, less jobs for the youth, all of this is happening in the backdrop of India's demographic dividend. And this, the editorial has said, is amounting to something of a national catastrophe. It is a huge loss to the country that it is not able to gainfully extract the benefit of its demographic dividend. So this is a major issue. Further, the editorial brings about an analysis that schemes like Manrega have not been complemented with a bigger program to train the youth. And this is something very unfortunate because the scheme Manrega has been continuing for 10 years now. And this continues to remain a scheme for the unskilled people, and skilling of these people has not happened till date. So this is a major cause of concern. An opinion that has been generated in this editorial is that the demands for reservation is only a side effect of the larger problem of the frustration that is coming within the youth who is not being able to get gainfully employed in the economy. So that is the larger issue which needs to be dealt with. That is the importance of this particular editorial. Now, before we end, some piece of information. We are starting a UPSC Prelims cum Mains classes from the 21st of January 2018. It shall be covering all basics like the NCERT daily newspaper, prelims, test series and mains answer writing on a daily basis. So all interested candidates, please do get in touch with us. These are our contact details and this is our phone number. With this, we finish today's discussion. I thank you all for watching and I hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you.